sold as a pleasure animal to a middle-aged man. But he chose to make her his wife. The mirror dome over Saravine's spire cast cold, white light across the crowd, flattening color and shadow until everyone seemed polished. Music drifted at a controlled volume, just enough to cover private conversations. Glass walkways hung over turquoise ocean far below, their surfaces shivering with faint vibrations from the city's climate stabilizers. Frank Thorne stood near the edge of the main platform with his arms folded, posture straight but not rigid. His dark garden jacket blended with the backdrop. He wasn't here to socialize. He worked as a botanical curator for the Arcology's upper gardens. Rare plants, closed ecological loops, the quiet work no one saw. This gala was mandatory. His department had secured new funding, and they wanted him to appear visible, human, reassuring. Instead, he watched the center of the room. A plinth rose from the floor. The host, a slim man with hair slicked like black glass, extended a hand as if unveiling artwork. A young woman stood on the platform barefoot. Her yellow skin glowed faintly under the dome lights, smooth and unmarked. Long white hair hung to her waist. Thin gold-threaded fabric crossed her collarbones and wrapped low over her hips. Her hands hung at her sides, still, but the tendons in her forearms stood out sharp. The host called her a pleasure animal. Frank's jaw tightened. He had seen this look before, people trying to pass off trained reflexes as calm. Her gaze kept tracking exit points. Lift, stairs, service hatch. She held her shoulders level, but her knuckles had gone pale. She wasn't performing serenity. She was managing panic. The crowd murmured. A man near the bar muttered something about collector's piece. Two guests in tailored white leaned toward each other and whispered, smiling. Frank didn't feel surprise. He had worked as a deep space scout for years, back when Saravine still funded off-world missions. He had watched crews crack under isolation. He knew what someone looked like when they were enduring, not living. That instinct, the one that always scanned for the fracture point, still lived behind his calm expression. The host began his pitch. Lot 6. Hybrid origin. Fully compliant. Certified docile. Conditioned for touch response. Frank raised his hand. Care inspection. The host paused. Eyes flicked toward him from every side. The term was legal, but rarely used. It allowed a buyer to check for injury before purchase. No one asked for it unless they meant to buy. The host's smile stayed fixed, but his voice sharpened. Briefly, a glass panel slid open at the plinth base. Frank stepped through. Heat radiated from the platform. Cyrian stood very still. Her pupils narrowed at his approach. "I'm Frank," he said quietly. "You don't need to speak." Her voice surprised him. Soft, low, controlled. Cyrian. He saw the faint tremor in her jaw stop once she said it. A real name anchoring her. He shrugged off his jacket and placed it on the platform. "You're cold." "I'm fine," she answered, clipped. The handler started forward. "No personal contact." "Not contact," Frank said. "Temperature aid." He watched her eyes, not her body. She didn't reach for the jacket, but her shoulders loosened by half a degree. "If I buy you," Frank said, "I don't use you." Something flickered in her expression. Confusion first, then suspicion. "Then why buy? They'll sell you either way," he said. He stepped back. The host signaled to resume. Bidding started. A silver-dressed woman called a number. A boy in a blue coat raised it board. Frank walked off the floor and into a side room. He requested a private console and entered an authorization few ever used. Article 52D, Private Welfare Clause. It reclassified an asset as a dependent under sponsorship. Expensive, irreversible. By the time he returned, the auction hadn't reached the second bid. "Transfer confirmed," he told the host. The host's jaw tightened. Cameras recorded him nodding anyway. Sold. The lights cut. Conversation rose again. Guests turned away, already bored. Frank stood while the handler tried to snap a leash cuff on her wrist. He moved between them, voice flat. "Not needed." The handler hesitated. Protocol lost. He stepped back. Cyrian climbed down. Her steps were precise, measured, almost silent. She stopped half a meter behind Frank. The jacket still lay folded on the platform. She didn't take it. She also didn't shiver. They walked through the dome's corridor. The floor vibrated faintly underfoot. Glass showed the ocean far below, white wakes of transport skiffs drawing lines across it. Frank kept an even pace, neither fast nor slow. She stayed just behind his shoulder, where trained people felt least visible. In the lift, silence pressed between them. He tapped his wristband, halting the lift mid-level. The doors sealed. Water moved below in smooth, dark lines. "You can leave in the lobby," he said. "No one will stop you." She watched him with sharp stillness. "Why offer that?" "Because you weren't made to stay," he said. "No one says that," she said. "I'm not from here," he said. "You live here. I grow plants here." "I don't belong to this place," he said. Her gaze flicked to his hands, then back up. "They'll mark you," she said, "for using 52D. They can." "Were you military?" she asked. "Scout," he said. "Same spine," she murmured. The lift resumed. She stepped half a stride closer so they would look less like buyer and product when the doors opened. He noted it as her first voluntary decision. They walked a narrow skybridge to his greenhouse loft. Warm air hit as the door opened, heavy with the scent of wet leaves and soil. Rows of glowing vines arched overhead, mist curling near the floor. The hum of irrigation pumps underscored the silence. She stopped inside the threshold, feet on warm glass, chin lifting. Frank set his jacket on a bench and retrieved folded sleep wraps, soft cream fabric, simple cut, and placed them within reach. "Bathrooms left," he said. "Door seals. No lock." He set water to heat. "Eat first or later?" "Later," she said. Her voice was steady now, not empty, just exhausted. He nodded. "Upstairs bed is yours. I'll take the balcony." Her eyes held on him for 3 beats, searching for mockery. She found none. Steam began to rise from the kettle. Outside, the ocean darkened under the city's shadow. For the first time since he had seen her, her hands were no longer clenched. The door sealed behind them with a soft hydraulic hiss, leaving the city outside like a different world. Inside Frank's loft, the temperature was warmer, the air thicker with the scent of damp soil and citrus leaves. A low hum from a nutrient pumps resonated through the floor like a slow heartbeat. Cyrian stood just past the threshold, barefoot on warm glass, her white hair still hanging like a curtain down her back. Her eyes moved across the space, rows of climbing vines, mist drifting from fine nozzles, benches stacked with seedlings, the mezzanine bed above the greenhouse canopy, scanning everything as if mapping an unfamiliar terrain for possible traps. Frank walked past her without looking back, moving with the unhurried precision of someone who had lived here long enough to know the exact placement of every tool. He placed his wristband on the charging dock, unbuckled the utility roll from his hip, and set it on the counter. His jacket remained folded on the bench where he had left it earlier at the gala. It looked out of place now, like a foreign object in this space built for quiet. "You can look around," he said, his tone even, almost procedural. She didn't answer at first. Her fingers flexed once at her sides, then stilled again. "Is this yours?" she asked finally, her voice cautious, as if she half expected the space to belong to someone else. "Yes," he said, opening a storage drawer for a kettle. "Everything you see." "Why live alone?" she asked. "I don't like noise," he said. Then he paused, glanced at her, and added, "Or people who mistake control for care." That answer made her blink. She didn't push. She stepped forward slowly, the glass floor firm and warm beneath her feet. She stopped at one of the hydroponic towers where thick-leaved vines wound upward around a glowing pole. Moisture beaded on the leaves. She leaned close, not touching, eyes narrowing. "Were they?" she asked. "Viral citrus hybrids," he said. "Low maintenance. High yield. Good for the air." Her brows drew together slightly, then eased. "You keep things alive," she said. It wasn't quite a question. "That's the job," he said. She didn't say anything to that. She stepped back from the vines and turned slowly, taking in the space again. Her shoulders were no longer square and braced. They had dipped slightly, like a tension cord beginning to slacken. Frank set the kettle on the counter and tapped the burner on. "There's food," he said, "if you want it now." Her stomach tightened at the smell of something faintly sweet. She hated that reaction. It betrayed need, but she nodded once. Yes. He pulled a shallow basket of bright orange fruit from a chilled drawer, cut two with a small blade, and set the slices on a steel plate alongside crisp flatbread and a small cup of steaming seed coffee. He didn't gesture for her to sit. He left the plate on the counter and stepped aside. She approached slowly, every movement measured, and picked up a slice. The juice stung her tongue, sharp, bitter, then sweet. She didn't realize how hungry she was until her body trembled once, quick and sharp. She caught his eyes on her and froze, waiting for a command. "Eat," he said simply, and turned back to his workbench. No praise, no watching. She finished every piece and set the plate down in a neat square on the counter seam. He glanced at it without comment. That mattered to her more than she expected. For a long moment, neither spoke. The mist nozzles hissed softly. Warmth rose through the floor in slow waves. "Why were you there?" she asked suddenly, breaking the silence. "At the gala?" "Yes," she said. "They made it mandatory," he said. "Funding meeting. Upper Gardens. You didn't want to go." "No," he said. "Then why bid?" she asked. His knife stopped moving on the board. He didn't look at her when he answered. "Because I've seen what happens when no one does." Her mouth tightened. She looked away. "And what happens now?" "You live," he said, "until you decide what else you want to do." She stared at him, trying to find the hook in his words. "That's simple." "Yes," he said. "You can't keep me." "They'll send someone," she said, quieter now, almost a whisper. "I know," he said. "They'll try. But you're under my name now. They have to get through me first." Something flickered in her expression. Not relief, not trust, just a faint shock of someone hearing a thing they had never been offered. She stepped back and looked up at the mezzanine bed. The sheet was perfectly straight, the corners folded with military sharpness. "Where will you sleep?" she asked. "Balcony," he said. "In the cold. It keeps the head clear," he said. She considered that, then gave a small nod, as if testing the balance of this new arrangement. She gathered the sleep wraps from the bench and carried them upstairs. Halfway up, she stopped and looked down at him. "Why did you ask my name?" she said. "Because it's yours," he said. She held his gaze for one silent second longer, then climbed the rest of the way. Frank watched the faint sway of the mezzanine as she moved across it, listened to the creak of the mattress as she sat. He turned off the burners, dimmed the lights to night mode, and stepped out to the balcony. Cold air hit him. The ocean stretched black and endless under the city's glow. He lowered himself into the hammock, exhaled, and stared up at the dome lights far above. Inside, the faint click of the mezzanine bed settling told him she was lying down. She hadn't locked any doors. She hadn't asked what he would want from her. That meant she was still waiting for the moment the kindness cracked. He stayed awake a long time, listening to the soft hum of the greenhouse and her quiet, even breathing above and thinking about how easily this could all collapse if he let her down even once. Morning broke through the dome in sharp, white lines that slid across the greenhouse floor. The mist system had cycled off hours ago, leaving a fine dew on every leaf. Frank stood at the counter barefoot, sleeves pushed up, slicing fruit with steady precision. The knife's soft rhythm cut through the quiet. He had been awake since dawn. Old Scout habits never left. He kept glancing toward the mezzanine, half expecting her to be gone. When the bed creaked lightly, he froze. Cyrian descended the narrow steps with silent, careful steps, wearing the cream sleep wrap, her long white hair brushed straight and dry. She had folded the blanket at the foot of the bed, squared each corner. That detail caught him, trained order deeply ingrained. She moved with the composed caution of someone who expected punishment for mistakes. She stopped near the citrus tower, her eyes on the floor instead of him. "I wasn't sure if I was supposed to stay." "You are," he said simply. "This is your place now." Her fingers flexed once, then stilled. "People don't get to keep things they buy," she said. "You're not a thing," he said. Her eyes lifted to him sharply, as if testing whether he meant it or if it was just another performance line. He didn't blink. "I don't know what to do if I'm not something," she admitted. The words came out clipped and quiet, like she hadn't planned to say them. "Then don't do anything," he said. "Just eat." He placed a plate on the counter, sliced fruit, warm flatbread, and a small cup of seed coffee. She approached like she was stepping into a trap, then took the cup and drank. Her hands trembled slightly from hunger she had tried to hide. "You've done this before," she said after a while. "What? Taking someone?" she clarified. "No," he said. "I've taken responsibility before. That's not the same thing." Her gaze narrowed slightly, evaluating. "You were a scout. You've seen people break." "Yes." "Did you?" He hesitated. No one had ever asked him that. "Not all the way," he said, "but close." She considered that answer, then nodded once as if filing it away. Frank cleared the plate when she finished, rinsing it under a thin jet of water. "There's something you should know," he said, tone shifting. Her back straightened. "What?" "The council sent a message last night," he said. "Routine inspection. They'll want to see you." Her shoulders tightened instantly. "They'll take me back." "Not if they can't prove you're what they called you," he said. "Right now you're registered as a dependent under my care. If they classify you as a person, they can't reclaim you." Her voice hardened. "And if they don't, then I fight it," he said. "Ow! Paperwork," he said, and his mouth twitched at her skeptical look. "It works if you know where to hit it." She lowered her eyes, silent for a long moment. "If they take me back, I won't come back whole," she said flatly. "I know," he said. His voice didn't rise, didn't soften. "That's why they won't." Something in her expression cracked. Not trust yet, but the edge of fear dulling just slightly. She breathed in slow, steadying herself, then glanced toward the rows of vines. "Can I help?" she asked, the words awkward, unfamiliar. "Yes," he said. "Start with trimming suckers. They steal nutrients." He handed her a small pair of shears and showed her the motion once. She copied it, careful, precise. The gestures seemed to calm her. She moved from plant to plant without speaking, white hair falling over her shoulder as she leaned close to inspect each leaf. Frank worked beside her in silence. The rhythm of it anchored them both. After a while she asked, "What happens if they decide I am a person?" "Then you choose what happens next," he said. "And if I don't know how to choose?" "Then you stay," he said, "until you figure it out." She paused, shears still in her hand. "And if I stay forever?" "Then you stay forever," he said. Her lips pressed together, not quite a smile, not quite disbelief. "You make it sound easy." "It isn't," he said. By mid-afternoon, the vines stood neatly trimmed and the air smelled sharp with cut leaves. She had stopped glancing at the door every few minutes. That told him more than anything else had. She washed her hands at the sink, water beading on bronze-toned skin, then looked at him directly. "What will they ask me?" "Who you belong to," he said. Her jaw tightened. "And what do I say?" "That you don't," he said. "Say you live here. With me. Not as property." "That will make them angry," she said. "Good," he said. She held his eyes, searching, and for the first time she didn't look away. Outside, the dome dimmed toward evening. The inspection would come soon. And for the first time, Frank thought maybe she wouldn't face it broken. Maybe she'd face it standing. The inspection came sooner than he expected. Late the next morning, while Cyrian was kneeling near the base of the citrus tower, trimming off a cluster of yellowing leaves, the door panel chimed twice, short, sharp tones that cut clean through the warm hum of the greenhouse. She froze in place, her hands locked on the shears. Frank rose from the workbench. "Stay where you are," he said calmly. Her voice was thin but steady. "It's them." "Yes," he said. "Remember what you are now." Her lips parted, ready to speak, but he shook his head once. "Just breathe." He crossed the loft, set his palm to the door console, and it slid open. Two figures in gray formal coats stepped inside, shoes clicking on the glass. They carried slim inspection tablets. Their movements were clean, rehearsed, polite. The taller one scanned the room without blinking. The shorter one's eyes went straight to Cyrian, analyzing her posture, her clothing, her lack of restraint. "Mr. Thorne," the tall inspector said, "we're here regarding a registry discrepancy concerning an unlicensed asset classified as a category for companion." "Guest," Frank said flatly, stepping aside to block their line of sight to the mezzanine. "She's under Personal Welfare Clause 52D, correctly filed." The shorter inspector's voice was smooth, but her eyes stayed sharp. "That clause is rarely used. That's not an argument, Frank said. Cyrian lowered the shears slowly, rising to her feet. Frank watched her jaw tighten, the controlled tension of someone trained to expect commands, not conversations. The tall inspector turned their attention on her now. Name. She hesitated for a half-second too long. Frank's voice cut through, calm, measured. Say it. Cyrian, she said, clear enough to carry. The inspector typed it without looking down. Recorded. He glanced at her clothing next, then at Frank. She appears autonomous. She is, Frank said, by choice. That is not typical, the shorter one said. Neither am I, Frank said. The silence stretched. The inspectors exchanged a look, a small flick of the eyes, a calculation. They began their scan. One walked the perimeter of the greenhouse, checking sensor logs and nutrient systems. The other scrolled through Frank's registry files, brows tightening at how perfectly they were arranged. No gaps, no errors, no opening to argue incompetence. Cyrian stood perfectly still near the tower, her hands at her sides, eyes locked forward. Frank saw the slight tremor in her throat. She was holding her breath. Breathe, he said softly, almost under his breath. Her chest rose slowly. The tall inspector finished the walk-around, returning to the entry pad. We will submit our findings. If the welfare clause is upheld, the asset becomes a dependent under your care until reviewed. She's not an asset, Frank said quietly. The inspector paused just long enough for it to register. Then they nodded and turned away. The door sealed behind them. Cyrian's shoulders dropped like a weight slid off. She gripped the edge of the workbench, knuckles white, her breath coming sharp and uneven. They were going to take me, she whispered. No, he said. They wanted to see if they could. She lifted her eyes to him, and for the first time, they were wet, not crying, just shining from pressure she'd held too long. If they come back, they will, he said, until the review passes. But now they know someone is watching back. She stared at him for a long, silent moment, then said, You spoke to them like they were nothing. They're nothing if you stop flinching, he said. Something shifted in her face then. Not relief, not trust yet, but the thin first line of defiance. She stepped away from the bench, walking slowly through the misty warmth of the greenhouse until she stood in the center of the floor, barefoot, head tipped slightly back as she breathed the air like it belonged to her now. Frank leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her. He thought about the question no one had asked yet, but everyone would. Why he had done this, why he had spent more than his inheritance to buy someone he didn't intend to use. He had an answer, though he hadn't said it aloud, because he had spent too many years watching people vanish quietly. On scout ships, on forgotten stations, in sealed corridors where no one spoke their names. He was done watching. Cyrian turned to face him again. Her voice was quieter now, but steadier. What happens if they pass the review? Then your name stays yours, he said. And if I want more than that, then we decide what more looks like, he said. Her gaze lingered on him for a long time. You say it like you mean it. I do, he said. For the first time, she smiled, small, brief, as if the muscles had forgotten how, but real. Then she stepped past him to the counter, picked up a slice of fruit, and bit into it without asking permission. Frank said nothing. He just let her eat, and for the first time, she looked like someone who belonged in the room. The greenhouse was quiet again, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet as before. It wasn't the hollow, watchful stillness she'd brought with her the first night. Now it felt suspended, like the room was holding its breath for her to decide what came next. Cyrian stood barefoot at the glass wall, looking down at the turquoise ocean far below. Transport skiffs traced pale lines across the water. The dome's light filters had shifted to afternoon amber, softening the hard white glare that had always made her feel exposed. She rested her palms on the glass, feeling its faint warmth, and caught her own reflection. Her hair loose down her back, the soft wrap clinging to her hips, her eyes no longer darting at every sound. Frank came up behind her, carrying a folded panel of thin metal and a slate stylus. Registry wants a status check, he said. If they pass you, they won't come back. Pass me for what? She asked. For being human enough to stop investigating, he said. She gave a dry half-smile. And what does that mean? Routine, autonomy, behavior that looks voluntary. Looks, she repeated. That's all they care about, he said. They don't know how to measure anything real. She stayed quiet, watching the water, then said, "What if I don't know how to be voluntary?" "You've already started," he said. "You chose to stay." Her fingers curled slightly on the glass. "I chose nothing. There was nowhere else to go." "That still counts," he said, calm. "Choice doesn't mean having options. It means deciding to stop running." She turned and looked at him fully. His voice hadn't changed since the day she met him. Calm, steady, deliberate, but now she could hear something under it. Not softness, resolve, like he'd already decided what she was worth and nothing could change it. She glanced at the thin metal panel in his hands. "What is it?" "Observation log," he said. "If they come back, we need evidence of life." "That sounds like a display cage," she said. "It's a shield," he said. "The only kind they respect." He set it on the counter. The log already held entries. Meal times, sleep cycle, plant work. Simple things written in precise script. She stared at it, unsettled by how complete she already seemed on paper. "You've been watching me," she said. "Cataloging," he said. "There's a difference." She stayed quiet for a while, reading the lines, then asked, "How long did they give you?" 7 days, he said. "Then the review board decides if you stay registered as a person or go back into inventory." She felt her throat tighten. "And if they don't pass me?" "Then I fight it," he said without hesitation. "With what?" she asked. "Everything I have left," he said. The blunt certainty of it made her stomach knot. Fear and something else tangled together. She reached for the stylus. He handed it over without comment. She hesitated, then wrote her name on the bottom of the page in clean, sharp strokes. "There," she said. "Now it's mine." Frank studied the signature, then nodded. "That's the first line that matters." He slid the panel into a wall slot where the board could pull it later. Then he opened a storage bin and pulled out a plain black shirt. "You'll need this," he said. "For what?" "Walking outside," he said. "People will see you eventually. They can't see you like this." Her body stiffened instinctively at the thought of being in public again. "If they know who I was." "They won't," he cut in. "Not if you walk beside me." She took the shirt slowly. It was oversized, warm from the cabinet, faintly smelling of citrus oil from his hands. She held it against her chest, gripping the fabric tighter than she meant to. "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow," he said. "Early, when the terraces are empty." Her pulse quickened. The thought of walking exposed through the city felt impossible, and yet part of her wanted to know if she could. He stepped back toward the citrus tower, checking the mist nozzles. "You don't have to," he added. "It's your choice." The word caught her off guard. She stood holding the shirt for a long time, saying nothing, until he stopped adjusting valves and looked at her again. "Frank," she said. "Yeah." "If they look at me," she said, "I'll think I'm theirs again." "Then look back," he said. That answer settled something deep inside her, something still raw but starting to root. She nodded once. "Tomorrow." Frank only gave a small nod in return, as if it were settled fact now, not a question. The tension in her chest didn't disappear, but it changed shape. It wasn't fear of being taken anymore. It was fear of being seen and wanting it just enough to scare her. Dawn arrived pale and cold through the dome, diffused by thin marine haze rolling in from the ocean below. The terraces of HFY Spire were almost empty at this hour. Only a few cleaners gliding along the walkways, drones scrubbing condensation off glass panels, and early shift gardeners heading toward the upper decks with tool belts slung over one shoulder. It was the only time of day Frank considered safe enough to risk taking her outside. Cyrian stood in front of the mirror near the mezzanine steps, wearing the black shirt he had given her. It was oversized, slipping from one bronze-toned shoulder, the fabric swallowing her frame in a way that made her look both smaller and more solid. She kept adjusting the hem as if trying to hide, then forcing herself to stop. Her long white hair was tied back in a loose knot the way he had shown her, to keep it from catching the wind on the open terraces. She hadn't spoken yet. Frank was at the counter, tightening the straps on his tool satchel, watching her in the reflection. He could see the strain in her posture, straight spine, locked knees, hands flexing at her sides in controlled pulses. She looked like someone standing on the edge of a high ledge, trying to remember how to move. "You don't have to," he said quietly. "I know," she said. Her voice was even, but her throat worked after the words came out. "Then why do it?" he asked. Her eyes stayed on the mirror. "Because I want to know if they'll still look at me like I'm theirs." Frank buckled the last strap. "They will," he said. "They look at everyone like that." She turned then, meeting his eyes fully. "And what do I do when it happens?" "Walk past," he said. "You're not there for them." Her jaw tightened. "What if I forget that?" "I won't," he said. She nodded once. It wasn't confidence. It was commitment. They left through the narrow service bridge. The door sealed behind them with a soft click, and the sound seemed to cut off the safety of the greenhouse. The air outside was sharper, colder, carrying the faint tang of salt and metal from the support struts far below. Cyrian kept half a step behind him, eyes darting from camera nodes to the thin security rails along the walkway's edge. The glass beneath their feet gave a blurred view of the ocean hundreds of meters down. It made her stomach twist, but she kept walking. They passed the first intersection. A pair of cleaners glanced up from their work. One's eyes lingered on her too long. Her body locked. Frank's hand brushed against hers. Not holding, just enough to anchor her. "Eyes forward," he murmured. She did. Her steps steadied. By the time they reached the lower terrace gardens, the light had shifted warmer. Sun filtered through the dome's atmosphere shields in slanted gold lines. The air smelled faintly of citrus and nutrient gel. Rows of hydroponic vines stretched across the terraces in symmetrical arcs, their leaves trembling under the soft hum of mist lines. Frank slowed near a bench and set down his tool satchel. "Here," he said. She stopped, uncertain. "Here what?" "Sit," he said simply. "Rest. Act like you belong." "I don't," she said. "You will," he said. She sat stiffly on the edge of the bench, hands in her lap, eyes locked on a point across the terrace. Two young technicians walked by, laughing about something on a datapad. Neither of them looked at her. The absence of attention hit harder than their stares would have. "They didn't see me," she whispered. "That's what normal is," Frank said. Her lips parted slightly. "I don't know how to be that." "You're doing it," he said. They stayed like that for a while. The city woke up around them, foot traffic increasing, distant elevator chimes, soft hum of service trams gliding past. No one stopped. No one pointed. Gradually, she shifted from rigid to still. Her shoulders lowered. Her breathing evened out. Frank watched without speaking. He could see it, the exact moment the tension began to uncoil. Not gone, not even close, but loosening enough for her to sit like a person, not a target. After about an hour, he stood. "That's enough for today," he said. She rose slowly, as if the weight on her back had changed shape. "They didn't take me," she said softly. "They can't," he said. "Not yet," she said. "Not ever," he corrected. She studied his face. "You believe that?" "I decided it," he said. She didn't smile, but something flickered across her eyes, recognition, maybe, of how deeply he meant it. They walked back through the terraces as the crowd thickened. She stayed closer to him this time, not behind, their arms brushing now and then as they moved. She didn't flinch. By the time they crossed the service bridge to the greenhouse loft, her hair had loosened from the knot, white strands trailing down her back. When the doors sealed behind them, she let out a long, uneven breath and pressed her palms to the glass floor as if grounding herself. "I didn't disappear," she said, almost disbelieving. Frank set down his tools and leaned on the counter. "You never would have," he said. She looked up at him then. Her voice was quieter but steady. "Next time, I want to walk in front." He didn't comment. He just nodded once, and that was enough. For the first time since he had taken her from that plinth, she looked like she was here by her own will. The greenhouse felt different the next morning, not quieter, not louder, just occupied. The mist lines had already cycled off when Frank woke on the balcony hammock. The dome light above the spire was still soft and blue, early and muted, but through the glass wall he could see her pacing slowly between the vine towers. Bare feet, black shirt, white hair loose around her shoulders. She moved like someone testing the shape of her own presence. Frank pushed the blanket off, sat up, and rolled his shoulders until the stiffness cracked out. He watched her in silence for a while, giving her the space to pretend he wasn't watching. It mattered, letting her think she had the room to herself now. She stopped when she noticed him finally and spoke before he could. I thought about leaving last night. He stood barefoot on the cold balcony tiles. And I stayed, she said. Good, he said. I wasn't asking for approval, she said quickly, like a reflex. You didn't get any, he replied, tone calm, and her lips twitched like she almost smiled. He crossed the floor, checked the nutrient tank levels, and said, "We need to talk about the review." Her posture stiffened. "When 3 days, he said. They'll want proof that you can function independently." Her fingers tightened on the fabric at her thigh. Independently means what to them? Routine, he said. Employment. Voluntary contribution. Something they can file under useful. I'm not useful, she said flatly. You're alive, he said. That's already more than they gave you credit for. She lowered her gaze, quiet. And if they don't pass me, then I appeal, he said. And if they deny that, I pull you off the registry and list you as my spouse. Her head snapped up. You can't. Yes, I can, he said. Article 52B. Nobody uses it anymore, but it's still there. That would make me yours, she said. That would make you safe, he said, steady. Her breathing hitched once, almost silent, and she looked away. Why would you do that for me? Because I don't lose people anymore, he said. She froze at that. The tone wasn't dramatic, just final, like someone stating the weather. It unsettled her more than if he'd said it with fire. He let the silence stand until she found her voice again. And what do you get out of it? Someone who chooses to be here, he said. That answer landed deep in her. She didn't reply. Instead, she moved to the counter where the observation log lay open from yesterday. Her name was still at the bottom of the last entry. She stared at it for a long time, then picked up the stylus and flipped to the blank page. Then let's give them what they want, she said. Frank stepped beside her, close but not crowding. Work, he said. Work, she echoed. They started with the vines. She trimmed and tied shoots while he checked pH levels. It became rhythm. Snip, tie, adjust, wipe, move. No commands. No corrections. Just tasks. By midday, her arms were speckled with fine droplets from the mist lines. She peeled the damp shirt off her shoulder to cool her skin and didn't seem to notice she had done it. Frank did, but he didn't say anything. He only passed her the next set of shears. They harvested small clusters of ripe fruit together. She followed his method exactly. Twist, lift, set gently into the crate, never break the stem. It required care more than strength. By the third crate, she was moving almost at his pace. He glanced over at her. You're good at this. It's quiet, she said. Things only move if you help them. I like that. That's why I stayed, he said. She gave him a small sideways look, curious but didn't press. When they stopped for food, they sat on the glass floor with their backs against the counter. She ate without hesitation now, not glancing to see if he watched. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with the back of her wrist and said, If they pass me, what happens next? You decide what it be, he said. And if I don't know, she asked. Then stay until you do, he said. She watched him for a long moment, silent, then nodded once. That afternoon, he took her to the registry terminal built into the wall panel. It was old, tucked behind a sliding cover, still coated in dust. He powered it on. The screen flickered pale blue. This is where they'll check, he said. They'll look at your daily activity, your logs, your registry tag. We can write anything we want here, job, skills, background. They don't care if it's real as long as it fits their boxes. She stared at the screen. So we lie. We build something they can't erase, he said. Her throat worked. What do I say I am? That's up to you, he said. She stood still for a long time, white hair drifting in the air from the vent above, then said, Botany assistant. Frank glanced at her. You're sure? I want to keep things alive, she said quietly. He nodded once and typed it in. The screen blinked green. Done. Her shoulders eased an inch. That's the last thing they expect from me, she said. Good, he said. For the rest of the evening, she moved through the greenhouse like it was hers, checking leaves, cleaning tools, making notes on the log without being told. He let her. When the dome lights dimmed and the city shifted to night mode, She stood at the window, watching the ocean fade to black beneath the glowing platforms. "I don't feel invisible right now," she said. "Because you aren't," he said. She turned and looked at him. "That scares me more than being invisible." "That means it matters," he said. She didn't answer. She just walked past him, climbed the mezzanine steps, and this time she didn't glance back to see if he was watching. Frank stood there for a while, listening to the soft hum of the pumps and the quiet creak of the bed settling above. He didn't follow. She had crossed some invisible line tonight, and now, for the first time, she wasn't just surviving in his space. She was claiming it. Morning broke clean and white across the upper dome, washing the greenhouse in muted brilliance. The mist system hissed on a timed cycle, casting fine droplets that glimmered as they fell through the warm air. The citrus vines trembled under the soft spray, leaves beaded with dew. Frank was already awake, crouched near the base of a nutrient tower, tightening a loose coupling. His movements were precise, mechanical, but his mind wasn't on the task. Today was the review. He rose slowly and scanned the greenhouse. Cyrian was upstairs on the mezzanine, standing at the narrow railing. Her long white hair was braided now, tied high at the back of her head so it wouldn't fall into her face. She wore the black shirt tucked neatly at her waist and a simple belt to cinch it, the fabric no longer swallowing her, but fitting her like something she owned. She watched him work without speaking. Frank straightened and met her gaze. "We'll do this once," he said. "I know," she said. "They'll come with a board link," he explained. "No questions about your past. Only about what you are now. They'll try to sound polite. It's not politeness, it's pressure." Her expression didn't shift. "I can handle pressure." "I know you can," he said. She came down the stairs barefoot, controlled and fluid. No hesitation in her stride anymore. "What if they don't believe it?" she asked. "Then we make them," he said simply. At 9 o'clock, the door panel chimed once, short and sharp. Neither of them flinched. Frank crossed the floor and opened it. 2 registry officers stood in the corridor, different faces from before. A woman with slate-colored eyes carried a case for the board slate. The man beside her held a biometric pad. Both wore the same gray coats, the same clean, expressionless look of people here to confirm a process, not witness a person. "Mr. Thorne," the woman said, "this is the formal review for your registered dependent, Cyrian." "She's ready," Frank said. His voice stayed calm, almost flat. They entered. Their eyes swept the greenhouse in one long practice pass. Vines pruned, tools cleaned, crates stacked, no signs of chaos. "Order." Cyrian stood by the counter with her hands resting lightly on the edge. The sunlight caught in her braid, streaking the white with pale gold. She didn't move. She didn't speak. The man spoke first. "State your name." "Cyrian," she said evenly. "Roll." "Botany assistant," she replied. "Duties?" She drew a breath. "Crop maintenance, pruning, harvest preparation, pH monitoring, log entry. Daily schedule, 0500 wake, 0530 inspection cycle, 0700 first missed interval, feeding and pruning until 1200, midday harvest, cleaning and documentation by 1800, she said, each word clipped and clear. The officers typed silently, not looking at her as they recorded. "Any behavioral incidents?" "None," she said. "Any resistance to assigned tasks?" "No," she said, then added before they could respond, "I chose them." That made the woman glance up. A flicker of something crossed her face. Doubt, maybe surprise, but it passed quickly. She turned to Frank. "Confirm." "Confirmed," he said. "Voluntary and consistent." The man gestured. "Biometric verification." Frank nodded once. Cyrian stepped forward and pressed her palm to the pad. The screen flashed green. "Identity verified," the device intoned. The officers exchanged a brief look. The woman closed the case with a precise click. "The board will approve permanent personhood status under Section 52D, effective immediately, registry classification, civilian resident. Review complete." Frank inclined his head once, logged and acknowledged. They turned without ceremony and left. The door sealed behind them with a soft hiss. The silence afterward was dense. Cyrian didn't move. Her palm was still faintly damp from the biometric pad. Her eyes stayed locked on the closed door as if waiting for it to open again. "It's done," Frank said quietly. Her breath caught. That's it, he said. She blinked slowly, like her body was trying to catch up to the words. Then she stepped back from the counter, walking slowly into the middle of the greenhouse floor. Her arms hung loose at her sides. She turned in a slow circle, looking at everything: the vines, the mist lines, the glass, the faint white light spilling down from the dome. "They can't take me back," she said. "No," he said. "They can't sell me," she said. "No," he said. "They can't erase me," she said. "No," he said again, steady. Her breath came out hard, shaky, and then she laughed, short, quiet, stunned. She pressed both hands to her face and stayed like that for a long time. Frank said nothing. He only watched. When she lowered her hands, her eyes were wet but steady. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," he said, "you decide what your life is." She walked to him slowly, barefoot on warm glass, and stopped close enough that he could feel the heat from her skin. Her voice was low. "I want this," she said. He studied her face. "This greenhouse?" he asked. "This," she said. Her hand lifted and rested against his chest, light and steady over his heartbeat. "You. Here. Us." For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he covered her hand with his. His eyes didn't break from hers. "Then it's yours," he said. She exhaled, slow and deep, like releasing something that had been locked inside her for years. By evening, she was barefoot again, wearing his shirt loose over her shoulders as she walked between the vine rows with a crate of fresh citrus. The observation log lay, closed on the counter, no longer needed. Outside, the dome dimmed to gold, then rose to night. Frank stood at the glass, watching her move through the misty light, and knew she wasn't surviving here anymore. She was living, and she was his, not owned, not claimed, but chosen. The story ended here, clean and final, with nothing left uncertain. She was free, she had stayed, and they had built something real.